They were found side by side, a brother and sister, freshly married, freshly murdered. The man who raised them sat on the porch with a gun, whispering, "They were mine." I had to stop it. But what if they weren't his? What if the truth he killed over was never the truth at all? This isn't just a murder case. It's a decades-old lie buried in a Southern family, where one brother's betrayal, one mother's silence, and two young lovers' secret tore everything apart. And by the time the DNA came back, everyone had already chosen who to blame. But no one saw this coming. It started with a sound. Two sharp cracks cut through the silence of a warm Sunday evening in Clay County, Alabama. A neighbor walking his dog paused mid-step. Another peeked through their blinds. Within minutes, flashing lights splashed across the quiet cul-de-sac. Deputies arrived at a modest one-story home with a flagpole in the yard and a worn basketball hoop leaning against the garage. The porch light was still on. The front door was wide open. And sitting calmly on the wooden steps was a man, clean-cut, barefoot, holding a pistol in one hand and a phone in the other. "They were mine," he told the dispatcher, his voice steady. I had to stop it. Inside the house, officers found two bodies, covered quickly, unnamed publicly. What followed was silence, a kind of stunned, suffocating quiet that rolled through the town like a storm cloud no one saw coming. The crime scene tape went up before sunrise. Reporters arrived by noon, but authorities gave little. Just a brief statement confirming a double homicide. No suspects were at large. No threat to the public. Just a father in custody. And two lives gone. At the diner, no one said names. At church, people whispered more than they prayed. Even the sheriff's office refused to comment on motive. The only detail anyone had came from the leaked 911 call. Not the whole tape. Just one line. "They were mine. I had to stop it." What was he stopping? And what could possibly make a man kill his own children? Lionel Pierce was just a man trying to hold his family together. People in Clay County knew him as the quiet type, never one for small talk, but never unkind. He stood out in town mostly for what he didn't do. He didn't gossip. He didn't drink. He didn't miss a Sunday service. A former Army mechanic with a strict sense of routine, Lionel's life revolved around two things: structure and his children. After his wife Rochelle died in a car accident nearly 15 years ago, Lionel didn't remarry. He didn't date. He barely even left the house unless it was for work or errands. Neighbors say he turned inward, poured himself into raising Kyle and Noelle. By all accounts, he was present. Not soft, but steady. He cooked, he cleaned, he kept the kids close. People used words like old school, protective, even overbearing. But no one ever said he didn't love them. He worked maintenance for the local school district, took pride in fixing what others threw away. That pride extended to his home, too, an aging house he refused to let fall apart. The lawn was always trimmed. The paint, even when peeling, was touched up by hand. A flag flew year-round. Inside, it was modest, but spotless. And if you asked anyone who knew him back then, they'd tell you, Lionel Pierce didn't seem like the kind of man who could kill. He was raising two kids in a world he didn't always understand, but he was raising them. Alone. When Cale made the basketball team, Lionel sat in the stands, even if he never clapped. When Noelle sang in the school choir, he stood in the back row videotaping with an old camcorder. He never bragged, never beamed, but he showed up, and in a town full of broken homes, that counted for something. So when the news broke, it didn't make sense. Not to the neighbors, not to the pastor, Not to anyone who'd ever seen Lionel hold a door open at the post office or walk Noelle to her car before school. This wasn't just a murder. It was a collapse. And no one could explain what pushed a man like Lionel Pierce over the edge. At first glance, Cale and Noelle Pierce looked like any other close siblings trying to survive the loss of a parent. After their mother died, they were rarely seen apart. At school events, they sat side by side. At church, they shared a hymnal. On social media, their photos were usually of the two of them, posed near the same backyard fence, wearing matching grins, captioned with inside jokes no one else understood. Some found it endearing. Others whispered that maybe it was too much. Still, most people chalked it up to trauma. They'd been through a lot, and when a father like Lionel kept his circle tight, it wasn't surprising his kids clung to each other. Friends from high school described Cale as protective, a little guarded, but loyal to a fault. Noelle, softer, more introspective, always watching more than speaking. They didn't party, they didn't date. Teachers said they were polite, but distant. One of Kyle's old teammates once joked that they acted like they were their own little world. Then they disappeared for a weekend. They were both over 18, so it didn't raise alarms at first. Lionel told a coworker they were visiting relatives out of town. Others assumed it was just a quick getaway before Kyle started working full-time at a local body shop. But when they returned, everything changed. They came home wearing wedding rings. Neighbors didn't know at first. Not until Noelle posted a blurry photo on her Instagram story, two hands intertwined, matching silver bands flashing under gas station lighting. The caption read, "Finally free." The post vanished after 24 hours, but not before screenshots started circulating. Not before whispers turned to phone calls. Not before someone in town finally asked the question out loud. Did those kids just get married? And more disturbingly, to each other? It happened so fast. That evening, just before sunset. The kind of quiet, golden hour Clay County was known for. Lionel Pierce had just finished mowing the backyard. His shirt clung to his back. The mower sat cooling on the side of the house when Cale and Noelle pulled into the driveway. They walked in together. Calm. No arguments, no tension, at least not yet. But by the time the neighbor across the street heard a shout, something had already broken. Inside, Lionel was holding a piece of paper, a legal-size sheet folded twice, a marriage license. He didn't find it. They handed it to him. The argument started slow, one voice rising, the other pushing back. Cale telling his father to listen, Noelle crying, Lionel shouting something about betrayal, about God, about, "What the hell is this?" A plate shattered. A chair scraped hard across the tile. Then silence. Then two gunshots. Lionel Pierce had stopped speaking. After his arrest, he barely responded to his lawyer, refused visits from his mother, and answered every psychological evaluation with either silence or scripture. His legal team, desperate for a defense that wouldn't end in life without parole, leaned into emotional trauma. A once decorated veteran, a widower, a man betrayed by his own blood. But one of the attorneys wasn't convinced it was that simple. The case was already impossible to sell to a jury. What if the foundation, the very core of Lionel's motive, was wrong? She filed a motion for full psychological review, and with it, a court-approved DNA test. The prosecution called it a delay tactic, a waste of time. Then the results came back. Lionel Pierce was not the biological father of Noelle, or Cale. At first, the defense team assumed the lab had made a mistake. They had the test rerun at two independent facilities. The outcome didn't change. He wasn't their father, not biologically, not legally, not in any way science could prove. When they told him, Lionel stared at the wall for a full minute. No blink, no twitch, just stillness. Then he laughed, quietly, almost in disbelief. "They're mine," he said again. "I raised them. I buried their mother. I gave up my whole life for them." His lawyer tried to press him, but Lionel's face cracked. Not in anger, but grief. Something deeper than confusion. A wound opening in real time. They were all I had left. He didn't ask who the real father was. He just asked for the test results again. And when he read them for himself, he folded the page slowly and placed it in his lap like it was a funeral program. "I killed my babies," he whispered. And for the first time since his arrest, Lionel Pierce cried. By the time Ruby Pierce was called in, the damage had already been done. She was 78, sharp-eyed, and still wore her wedding band 22 years after her husband passed. She was more than just respected. She was admired. Known for her sweet tea, her sharp tongue, and the fact that she'd raised 2 boys on the same porch, where her son was now facing life in prison. Ruby kept her composure when asked to come in. She didn't cry, didn't protest. Just packed her Bible, put on her best coat, and walked into the meeting room like it was Sunday service. What she said stunned everyone. Yes, she knew there had been a brief time when Rochelle and Lionel were separated. Yes, Marvin, her younger son, had once come to her in tears, saying he'd made a mistake. That mistake, she said, had a name, Kyle. "Just Cale?" the attorney asked. Ruby hesitated. "That's what Marvin told me." And she believed him. Or maybe she wanted to. He was her baby, the charming one, the one who got into trouble but always found a way to land soft. Lionel was strong, steady, and never needed mothering. Marvin? Marvin always needed something, so she kept it to herself. Even when Kyle was born, even when Rochelle returned to Lionel, pregnant and quiet. Ruby never asked, never interfered. She convinced herself it wasn't her place, that it wouldn't matter if they just moved forward. She told herself secrets didn't always need to come out, especially not the kind that could break a family. But she knew, at least about Cale. And when the second DNA result came back, proving that Noelle was Marvin's too, Ruby's silence felt like more than a mistake. It felt like betrayal. When asked why she never told Lionel, Ruby looked away. Because he loved those kids, and I loved all my boys. I didn't want to break either one of them. She said it like a confession, like a woman who believed love and silence were the same thing. In the aftermath, public reaction split. Some called Ruby the root of it all, a woman who protected a lie until it turned deadly. Others said she was just a mother, trying to keep her family from falling apart. But no one denied this. Her silence cost lives. By the time Ruby left the courthouse, the image of her family, the one she'd worked her whole life to preserve, was shattered. One son in prison for double murder. One son disgraced for betrayal. And 2 grandchildren buried in the same cemetery, under the wrong name. The courtroom was full, but no one could meet Lionel Pierce's eyes. He sat motionless beside his defense attorney, shoulders square, face unreadable. He didn't look at the gallery. He didn't glance at Marvin, who sat 2 rows behind the prosecution, his hands clenched together like prayer. When the judge asked Lionel to enter a plea, he didn't hesitate. Guilty. No trial, no statements. Just one word that dropped like a hammer. The judge nodded. Life in prison. No possibility of parole. Sentence accepted. Case closed. But outside the courtroom, the case was anything but over. People's opinions were divided. Were Kyle and Noelle actually siblings? Legally, no. Biologically, yes. But they never knew that. Raised together, treated as brother and sister. They shared a home, a last name, a father figure. Did intention matter more than DNA? Was it incest, or was it love that bloomed in confusion? Some called them victims of circumstance. Others called them disturbed. A few refused to speak their names at all. In town, photos of Cale and Noelle vanished from school hallways and team websites. Teachers refused interviews. Church members stopped answering their phones. But the louder debate centered around three names: Lionel, Marvin, Ruby. Lionel, the man who raised two children only to kill them in a moment of rage and heartbreak. His defenders said he was pushed past the brink, lied to for years, humiliated by the truth. Others said nothing justified what he did. That murder, no matter the pain, was still murder. Marvin, the brother who fathered two children in secret, then watched them be raised by someone else. Many saw him as the true architect of the tragedy. He claimed ignorance, but most didn't buy it. He lived close. He saw them grow up. Could he really have never noticed? And then Ruby, the matriarch who chose silence over truth. She said she was protecting her sons. She said she meant no harm. But some believed her silence did more damage than any bullet ever could. In the end, Marvin walked free. He never faced charges. He issued a public statement expressing deep regret for the pain caused, then left town. No one knew where he went. Ruby returned to her home, her porch flowers untouched. Her name, once said with respect, now passed through tight lips and long pauses. The law had spoken, but the people hadn't stopped asking if love wasn't the crime. Why did two people have to die? And if betrayal wasn't illegal, why did it destroy an entire family? What would you have done if the truth meant destroying the only family you had left? Or worse, what if telling the truth would have saved them all?